Hello and welcome to the F1 Word Live and to the weekly word. And my God, is it good to be back. A whole week without creating any content, and it's this withdrawal. F1, long time since F1 seems to have finished. Still another couple of weeks to go, but we're going to keep you as entertained as we can here on the F1 Word. Fair few bits to get through today. We're going to be talking about Force India, of course. They've been bought out by Lawrence Stroll and a consortium this week, which is good news for Formula One. We'll talk about that in a moment. What that means for the driver market as well, because that is inevitably going to throw things even more up in the air than they already were. And also we're going to be talking about Fernando Alonso and his cheeky little Twitter tease. That's a mouthful I've been practicing all day. And yeah, I will get onto that a little bit later on. We might go on to something about the paywall as well when it comes to TV, because I'm in a bit of a ranty mood with that one, which I'm sure you'll all be delighted to hear. How are we all though in chat? Are we all good? If you're watching this after the stream's gone live, then hello to you guys as well. Great to have you all with us as ever. I am going to be joined by John T, so I suppose the logical place to start in that respect is to say a very good evening. It's been a while, mate, to John T.
Well, it's only been a week.
It feels like forever. I've been here painting walls and fitting out this room, which still is echoey as hell, I must say. But doing all this, but it feels like forever. Obviously not for you.
No, well, I've been at work all week, so it never feels like forever.
Fair enough. It's not just me, though, that feels like F1's been away forever, though, is it?
Oh, no, that's definitely the case. I mean, we had a little something to keep us occupied yesterday, but beyond that, it's been quite unpleasant.
It has 2 weeks to go as well still, but that's not too bad, I suppose. I think F1 Magazine put me in my place on Twitter for that one, so just only 14 days, it's not that long. But anyway, we are wandering off topic as we always do. Force India, we really need to start there, Jonty, because it all kicked off earlier this week and we didn't get a chance to really talk about it, but they have been bought by a consortium led by Lawrence Stroll. What was your initial feeling to that? Because I'll be honest, I was mixed on it all.
Honestly, I was quite happy, because it keeps one of the more popular teams, who are the real underdog story, in. And that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
That's the thing, is it's looking at it from that point of view. I mean, I almost look at it in a really terrible way as the lesser of two evils, if that makes any sense. You know, we were talking about Rich Energy, weren't we, last Sunday, and how bad it would be if they got in, because we don't believe they've got the money that they say they have. We know Lawrence Stroll has got the cash to back this team, and of course, this has guaranteed all 405 jobs, I think it is, at Force India, so that's fantastic news. It keeps them on the grid, it pays off all the creditors in full, and they've promised they can back the team financially, so what more can we ask? And like you say, they're a proper underdog team. They punch well above their weight, and if they've got a bit of cash behind them, they're looking good, and I'm pleased that they're staying, because I know, John, we discussed it a lot. We can't afford to lose any team from the grid, but there's a little bit of me that's apprehensive with it all because of what it could mean in terms of the driver market.
Yeah, because if we're staying unbiased, as we should, then from the Stroll perspective, Lance has got to get in that car straight away to really make it worth their while. None of us would like to see that. You know, we'd like to see the drivers stay where they are to the end of the year, so they've got the full year behind them, and then we have all the drivers switching places, well, some drivers switching places between the seasons. In the middle of the season causes a lot of confusion and throws the point system all out of whack. But for them, he's got to be in that seat. It's painful to say it.
This is the thing, isn't it? You sort of think about the driver market, and there's one blatantly obvious move that we would expect to see. Because if I were Lawrence Stroll, again staying completely on the fence, and it was my money I put in, I wouldn't want to continue to pay Williams for Lance to stay in that car and put my money into another Formula One team, whether I had billions or not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't want to be paying for two things at once when you really don't need to. It's just a case of what happens to the guys over in the pink overalls already.
Listen, I mean, like I said a minute ago, you know, the big thing is the jobs are safe in terms of mechanics and all those at the factory and everybody behind the scenes. But in terms of the drivers, as you've said there, we face what I think would be a travesty. Perhaps I'm in the minority, that we could end up with Ocon or Perez or both not on the grid next year. That would be awful. You know, Perez is a fantastic midfield driver, massively underrated. Ocon, a big star of the future, and he could miss out to Lance Stroll because daddy's bought him for Formula One team. That's really not the way to put it, Sean, but you know what I mean. And then another driver that comes in to keep him happy.
Yeah, it's possible. None of us would like that. I think for all of his little faults last year that myself included have been critical on, no one wants to see Perez go. Since he very first came in, he has been a great underdog driver, pulling results out of the hat. So we don't want him to go. And Ocon has shown real promise. I mean, what was he on? 28 races without failing to finish or something until Brazil last year, I think.
Yeah.
And that's from his first race in. I mean, that's a hell of a performance.
You look at, kind of sticking on topic, we're wandering off a little bit. When you actually look at the drivers still available on the market, we won't, but we could end up in a situation where Sainz, Ocon and Perez aren't on the grid next year. That would be really bad for the sport and the future of the sport.
It's hard to say future of the sport because there is a big chance that a lot of the young stars we see all through Formula 2 would come up into that seat. So maybe the future wouldn't be quite as bad, but it's certainly unfair on the present drivers. They shouldn't be losing their seats just because of money troubles around at the top. Ultimately, that doesn't really affect what they're doing when they're on track. But that they could lose their ability to do that on track through something that's completely out of their control is a little bit unfair. Now, I know a lot of people will probably be saying, oh, but it's Perez who kicked into motion the administration, so he did have something to do with it, but that was just a case of keeping his seat alive. If he hadn't done that, Force India would be gone.
Well, this is it. He got a lot of criticism. We talked about it, didn't we, at the time? But actually, what he did was save the team. I mean, there were possibly better ways to go about it, I suppose. But at that time, that was maybe the only option they saw as a viable one, and he helped to push it along to save the team. But I suppose it depends on, had Rich Energy got in, which we did not believe for a second they would, but if they had, let's talk hypothetically, 100% Perez will be gone. Because that tweet from them, professional and pathetic, was clearly aimed directly at Sergio Perez and Mercedes. So Perez would have gone, no doubt about that. And I'd be surprised if Ocon stayed if they're taking digs at Mercedes as well. But Lawrence Stroll, I can see looking at Sergio and saying, he's made this possible for us. He saved this team. He allowed us to come in and gave us the opportunity to buy the team and to save these 405 jobs and to go racing. Keep him on board, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone in the chat actually knows any members of the Stroll family. Get them watching so they can hear. Because in a perfect world, what we'd like to see is, maybe not like to see, but the Strolls do what's best for them and get Lance into the seat. Ocon goes to Williams as a part of a Mercedes deal, so they end up benefiting slightly from it. And Perez is kept in the Force India team, and Stroll does the magnanimous thing of playing a full-on number 2 driver role for the rest of the year to maximise the points that Perez can take as a thank you for keeping the team alive. Wouldn't everyone love that to happen?
I mean, Ocon to Williams is quite a horrible thought for him, but I suppose if it involves a Mercedes tie-in, then we could see Williams in a couple of years doing a Haas, if you like, and with that Ferrari backing, they've moved forward, and maybe Williams will do the same. So it'd be good for Ocon, perhaps long-term, but the idea of him dropping into that Williams is quite harsh, because I do like Esteban Ocon. I do highly rate him. A lot of people don't. They think he's just another midfield driver, but, you can't, yeah. Anyway, so I'm one of those moves tonight, so I have to be careful what I say. But I think he deserves to be top end of that midfield and fighting in that Force India. But at the same time, I agree with you. Lawrence Stroll has to do what's right for him. He's got to do what's right for his money, and he's got to do what's right for that team. And I suppose as well, getting Lance in the car now, working with somebody of Perez's experience rather than the inexperience of Sirotkin, if that makes sense, and then build towards next year would also be good for 2019 in the future for the team, sort of looking beyond the next couple of races, if that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But I do think there's a bit of a difference between the Force India and Williams situation because money was much more of a bigger issue for Force India. Yes, it is clearly an issue for Williams and certainly will be next year after Martini are gone. I've heard nothing about them even talking to a new title sponsor. But as things stand, they still have a decent sort of monetary income. It's the car that they're struggling with. They desperately need some kind of partnership deal with a bigger team, and as the engine supplier, Mercedes are the best option for that.
Well, Toto Wolff kind of alluded to that, didn't he? Last week they were talking to Williams. Williams wants to try and maintain the classic term of constructors, don't they? Which you can kind of understand, but I think Formula One's changing in that respect, and I don't think it'll be long before we see official B teams. But we're not getting to that. That's maybe a debate for another day, maybe a Wednesday stream at some point, because that'd be a good one to get into. But if we're thinking on it, do we think Lance Stroll will be in that Force India by Spa? Because I kind of can't help but feel that if he was going to be in that car come Belgium, we'd already know.
But we wouldn't already know because at this moment in time, they're still on official shutdown.
Yeah, they're still on official shutdown Tuesday, but Alonso's still teasing us, probably with a sale on new sunglasses or something, just to try and kind of troll us all. But yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know. I just feel like they might have turned around or somebody might have let something leak, but it's back-to-back races, so if he's not in for Belgium, he won't be in for Italy, so it could end up being Singapore. But I think getting him in before the end of the season makes sense for Lawrence Stroll. But one thing I did want to bring up, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, I didn't mean to message you with this one, but it's one I kind of want to have a word on, because I think not every, but a lot of F1 YouTubers, a lot of people in the F1 community are very critical of Lance Stroll, and I want to discuss it briefly. Are we unfairly critical of him, if we're being honest, Jonty? Because, you look back to last year, he did get a podium. Yes, luck was involved, but at the end of the day, as I've said a million times, you've got to be in that position to capitalise on that luck. He qualified fourth in Monza and got himself a front row start because of those penalties on that ridiculous Saturday that were applied. And you go back through his career: Italian F4 champion 2014, Toyota Racing Series champion 2015, Euro F3 title in 2016. He was in the Ferrari Driver Academy. He was Ferrari development driver in 2015. Clearly, there's some pedigree there. So are we unfairly harsh, or do you think a lot of the hate that gets thrown at him is because daddy's got money?
Oh, that's clearly why a lot of it will be thrown his way. Personally, my only issue I've had is the way that people throw around the podium too much, as if it is completely justification for everything by itself. Obviously, he's going to have the chops to get to Formula One. Even with the billions backing him up, he's still got to put in the performances to qualify for a super license to get all the points required. He has had to do what's required on track. But the only thing that gets me is how people use something that was pure 100% luck. There's no bones about that. 7 cars that would have been ahead of him retired, and 2 other cars which would have been ahead of him. One got a stop-go penalty, and the other one had to come in to replace his headrest. So that's 9 cars which would have been ahead. So it is 100% luck. And people use that as justification. Use Monza. Yes, there was silly engine penalties, but the lap that he put in those conditions was incredible. That proves that he's got what it takes. Not Baku. Just forget Baku. It was luck. Yeah, great, he got the points, but ignore that. Focus on Monza.
Yes, I agree with the luck side for Baku. I think the point I'm kind of making is he wasn't responsible for Vettel's idiotic driving, Hulkenberg's error and crash, the reliability problems for, was it Kvyat? Palmer, I think, had him. His teammate had the problems as well, Raikkonen as well. He is lucky, but he beat other people to the line behind him, yeah, I suppose, in slower cars. But I feel like I agree 100% that people will use, but he got a podium in his first season as defence of everything that he is, and that makes him an amazing driver. It doesn't, but you know what I mean? There are plenty of drivers that have got podiums in F1 and done nothing with it. But I kind of feel like he gets too much stick for that, and too many people will say, it was lucky, whereas, do I dare say, why not? Whereas a lot of people won't accept that Lewis Hamilton was massively lucky in Germany this year. I'm not comparing Stroll and Hamilton, but you see what I mean? People will say, it was just luck. That was all it was in Baku. But then you'll get, but Hamilton drove really well from 14th in Germany.
Yeah, he did drive really well, but in a superb car that is the second quickest on the grid.
Do you know what I'm saying though?
Yeah.
Not trying to trot. I'm going to get so much stick from Hamilton fans. Oh, you hate him. It's like, no, I'm just making the point that Lance Stroll is criticised because he got lucky, whereas other drivers, not just Hamilton, there's been plenty of times. Vettel, I guess, got lucky, if you could say, in Australia as well, but doesn't get the same criticism. I know, again, you're comparing four-time world champions with a kid, basically, who's not really done anything in Formula One yet, apart from that podium. But you know what I'm like on these streams. I like to play devil's advocate a bit, Jonty.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the problem is, most of, not so much the people in chat, because they're the ones who are really focused into what we do. The people who watch the posts, watch the stream on the replays, you get a lot more negativity in the comments. But maybe it's because we can't react on the spot. I don't know. But it is the general public of fans who will have that negativity and will be unable to see how we can easily differentiate between someone's performances on track and the person. That is another big problem that ties into all of this. There are several drivers on the grid who I really, really, really do not like in their personality, but I have nothing but respect and admiration for their performances on track. And I'm not going to name anyone because that would just erupt into a massive storm.
It's about the unbiased. That's kind of the point. I'm looking at both sides of Stroll, and I don't know. I think he gets a lot of unfair stick. Some of it absolutely is justified. He's not a brilliant driver. He's not about to be a world champion. I don't ever see him lifting a world championship trophy. You could put him in that Ferrari or in that Mercedes. I just can't see him doing it. A number two driver at a team like Ferrari, he could work out very well. Top end of the midfield, if he can hop in that Force India and surprise us all, which we've said before, Jonty, we've been critical of drivers, but we've always said we would love nothing more than for them to jump in a car and prove us completely wrong. And if he does that at Force India, he could get himself a name as, I guess, a bit like a Sergio Perez, kind of in that midfield with a shot at possibly a number two role at a top team one day to support a Leclerc or a Russell, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And all he's got to do is just try and keep himself away from the headlines of Daddy Billionaire. That's what he needs to focus on. Just try and stay away from the public eye as much as possible off track and just do all of his talking on it.
Yeah, Ali G on WA says, look at K-Mag last year compared to this. That is a great example. I've said it a lot. We were quite critical in the winter of him, and he's gone out and surprised us big time this year, and Lance Stroll might do the same next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, me personally, I was extremely critical of him in the winter break, but we did reiterate the point of, we like him, and he is a good personality to have around the paddock, but on track, his performances last year were reckless and not very impressive at all. This year, he's turned it around and has been easily the best of the two drivers at Haas.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And surprisingly so, I think. Like I say, we're quite critical in the winter of him. But back to, I think we'll go to Williams quickly with all this, because obviously this is going to have big ramifications for them as a team. It's likely Stroll will leave. If he doesn't leave mid-season, he's going to leave come the end of the season, isn't he? I think we're pretty confident on that. So who fills that seat? I mean, everyone's going, oh, Robert Kubica would be a great call, but from what we understand, it would be a Mercedes driver if a deal's done, so possibly a George Russell, and I assume that would be alongside Sergei Sorokin, because last I read, he's got a 2-year deal all paid up for and done and dusted.
Yeah, Sorokin's confirmed. I don't think there's anything they could do to get rid of him. I don't think they would want him to go with the money that he's bringing in. For the other seat, if it's not Ocon through some Mercedes deal, then I'm not sure. I would be one of the first to love Kubica to be in there, but I don't think it would happen. I love a comeback story. Look in the past, people like Lauda, Johnny Herbert. I mean, a lot of the younger people might not know Johnny Herbert basically had his foot torn off and it was held on by a piece of skin. And he still recovered from that and came back and came into racing F1 and won 3 times. That's a hell of a comeback story. This would be great. It would be great for Williams' PR, but it just won't happen.
I agree that the story would be fantastic and it'd be brilliant to sell that, but I I don't see Kubica. I'm sorry to Kubica fans, I really am. I'd love it, but I just don't see him getting in. I think if he was going to get in, he would have been in this year. I think they're quite happy with what he's doing behind the scenes. He seems, I wouldn't say happy, but content in the role that he's got. But I think we have to be honest, as harsh as it may sound, and say that, you know, regardless of injury, he's in the twilight of his career, if you could call it that, and it's time to start looking to your Russells and your Ocons and drivers like that. And Williams himself have said, and when they took on Sirotkin and Stroll, they've always said, we have a history of promoting young drivers and giving them a chance, and I don't think they go back on that. And if Mercedes tie in as well, it will be a Mercedes driver.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, Russell is the other one because he's got those ties to Mercedes. And if he goes on to win the F2 championship, which at the moment I think he will, it's just a straight, simple move because once you win F2, GP2 as it was, you can't stay in it.
I am going to do a video on what this all means for the driver market and everything because my 2019 driver predictions were terrible. So obviously everything's changed since then. So I'm going to do another one of those in the next couple of weeks. But based on these two teams then, Jonty, before we move on, Force India and Williams, who will be in those Force Indias for Belgium and what are you expecting for next year in terms of lineup?
I think the drivers will stay the same for Belgium, but it wouldn't be a surprise if there was changes. However, 2019 will be completely different. Stroll will 100% be in the Force India. And I have no idea who the other driver will be. Because don't forget, this come as a consortium led by Lawrence Stroll. There's been no real details about that I've read. Who's to say that he hasn't sort of teamed up with Dimitri Mazepin and we'll get Nikita in the car next year?
I've got the names for you. I've done my digging. If you're interested, we've got...
You've been able to find it?
I have, yeah. Oh my God, I've got to pronounce names. Andre Desmararis, that's wrong, but Canadian entrepreneur. Jonathan Dudman, Monaco Sports and Management. John Idle, who's a fashion business leader. John McCaw Jr., telecommunications investor. Michael D. Picciotto, possibly, financial expert, and of course, Stroll's business partner as well. So... yeah, there's no... I did think it might be Mazepin. I thought they might have got maybe 2 or 3 people got their heads together, but there's quite a few there that have got involved. So it's not all going to be under Stroll's control, is it?
No. It'll probably have sort of a leading interest, but somebody you mentioned there has ties into Monaco. What if Leclerc doesn't go to Ferrari?
Oh, God, tinfoil hats. Oh, no. Oh, that's me up all night now. Thanks for that, Jonty. That's a video. I think Stroll is nailed on for Force India next year. I think that's pretty much, or whatever they'll be called. We're coming to that in a second. Don't worry, chat. Pretty sure that will happen. I think Perez will stay. I think he'll get not rewarded for what he did, but I think they'll stand by him for next season. His experience as well, alongside, whether we like it or not, a very inexperienced driver. As for Williams... I still think Sirotkin will stay, regardless of how poor he's been this year. We have to remember that car is dire. That was the term I'll go for. So you have to cut him some slack on that. First year, still learning. I'm going to go Sirotkin and Russell at Williams.
Next year or for Belgium?
Oh, yeah, I asked a question, didn't I? Belgium, I don't think anything will change for Belgium. I think it will be Perez and Ocon. I think they need to get the points on the board. And they need some stability at the team, if that makes sense, before they start chopping and changing. So that'll be 2019 definitely. I can see Stroll in from maybe the flyaways onwards for Singapore, but that means Ocon will probably end up at Williams to the end of the year. But I think Ocon, we were talking about it, Jonty, I think it was with you, but I think if we were McLaren, we'd be trying very hard to get Sainz and Ocon for next year.
Oh yeah, very much so.
But yes, we should leave it on Force India there. We are going to come on to Alonso in a second, but I want to have a bit of a moan. Surprise, surprise. I want to have a rant. F1 TV and all that stuff and the paywall in the UK. Chase Carey has come out this week and said that the decline in viewing figures is nothing to do with the sport as such. It's all to do with the move behind the paywall. It's really frustrating to me, and I'm ad-libbing quite a bit here, by the way. There's nothing written at all for this in terms of notes, but what's really frustrating for me is this is a company that are desperate to take this sport to the fans. They are desperate to pull in a whole younger generation, yet they don't seem to see the value in turning to Sky and going, here's your £700 million back or whatever, we're off with F1 TV because that's going to pay us more money. If you want to negotiate a new deal, we'll do that. And I know it's a contract. And I know from experience, I don't know about you, Jonty, perhaps you've had similar experiences. It's hellish to try and get out of a contract with Sky, even as a customer. But the money behind Formula One and the money that Liberty Media have got and the legal team they'll have behind them, there is no reason why they cannot get out of that contract in some way and open it up to at least some live races on terrestrial TV, if not the full F1 TV experience.
Yep, totally agree. It stings a little bit more the fact that they are publicly saying that they're aware of it and then not making any kind of statement about addressing it. I think that's what really hurts.
Well, this is it. They're almost accepting the issue and then going, but nothing we can do. And it's like, well, yeah, there is. There's plenty you could do. You own the sport. You own the commercial side of it. You can do what you like at the end of the day. But it's this frustration. I'm not going to name names because it's not fair, but there's a young lad who's followed the channel for a hell of a long time. I think since probably day one, so just over a year now. And he is a huge Formula One fan, fairly young, still lives with his parents, and I believe he watches on Channel 4. When that goes, and he's a big fan, he will not be able to watch the sport anymore. He will not have any access, potentially, to any races. And it's, I see people saying all the time when I get on this, oh, well, why don't they just buy Sky? Not everyone can. Not everyone can, not everybody wants to. It should be on terrestrial TV. It's a sport that has always been on terrestrial TV, not just in the UK, but worldwide. It has to get sorted because, it's all right Sky having a contract till 2020, whatever, that's fine. But when you think of the current age of the fan base, I'm sorry, John, we're in that one, but there's going to come a point where we're not going to be around anymore. And if they don't sort this out and get young fans engaged and get them watching on TV, there's not going to be a fan base, and so there won't be a sport at the end of the day. So just sort it out. I think you've got the figures there, John, as to what it would mean in terms of money for Liberty Media and how obvious it is that they need to make F1 TV available worldwide.
Yeah, because it's a bit ridiculous. Certainly in the UK, I can't speak for other countries, but right now, the absolute cheapest that you can get Sky Sports F1 is £40 a month. You can actually do 38, but then you're not getting in HD, and which TVs aren't HD now? It looks like you're looking through a rainy window. £40 a month. That's just ridiculous. And then you look at the Sky viewing figures, which on average this year comes out to around 650,000 over the course of a race weekend. Whereas Channel 4, when they have a live weekend, it's over 2.5 million. And you have to think that it would be even higher if they've got that regular programming, because there's going to be a lot of people who are saying, I can't be bothered with it because I don't know which races I am getting, which races I'm not getting. It's ridiculous.
What I will throw in there before anybody comes in chat is Sky Sports F1 itself is not £40, but you cannot just go out and say, I'd like Sky Sports F1. You've got to buy one of their entertainment variety bundle package things, whatever they want to call them. And that's instantly, I think, about 20 quid a month. And then you've got to put your Sky Sports on top of that. And I think, no, they have changed it. You can just buy the Sky Sports, but you still have to have that original package. So you're still looking at, like Jonty said, £38 plus. And if you only want to watch F1, that's £38 per month at least, just to watch potentially a race every other weekend. And I know there's things like Now TV, but that doesn't work out much cheaper in the long run. It might be £10 a week or something like that, which works out at £20 a month. But it goes back to that point. If you're a young kid, you're 10 years old, how are you going to afford £20 a month if your parents aren't Formula One fans and don't want to pay it? And then you look at, are you then going to go to Grand Prix when you're a little bit older and you can afford it? If you're, say, 16 and your granddad wants to take you to a Grand Prix, you're going to want to go if you've not watched it for the last 6 years because you can't afford to buy a TV package. And I know F1 TV isn't free, but I would more than happily pay £10 a month for F1 TV than have to pay Sky as much as it is over the course of a season. I'm not even going to sit here and do the maths, but it's stupid money really for what you get. And, the Sky coverage, I'll always defend them. They do a great job. There is a lot of bias there, but some of the features they do, I think we call them, don't we, John T, are absolutely brilliant. But if they're a dedicated channel that you have to pay up to £40 a month for, they should not be, here's a race, now we're going to repeat this race 16 times in 3 days, we're going to repeat the F1 show constantly, and we're going to show you reruns of stuff 10 years ago. I'm not interested in that, thanks. Get some original programming on there. If it's going to be a channel you pay for, it should be a channel that pumps out regular original content.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have been mentioning Now TV. Absolutely. That is cheaper. And you're paying for just that channels. So you're not getting any of the other benefits from Sky. So ultimately, in my opinion, it works out 3-4 times more expensive because you're not getting the benefit of a decent box, which you can record hundreds of hours of TV on. You have to be watching it then. So yes, it is an option, but it's not a great option. And as we saw the last time around, doesn't have access to the red button, which Sky, in their genius, decided that they were going to put the F1 show live on the main channel and switch the Formula 2 feature race to the red button. That only works for people who have a Sky box. Anyone who is watching on Now TV, BT Vision, what's the other one? There is another option, can't remember what it was.
Virgin?
No. Sky Go. They can't use it. It's ridiculous. It's just absurd. And it's just a case of Rupert Murdoch, I think. That's the biggest problem. And like you say, how is it going to affect the future? Liberty are constantly going on about attracting new fans to the sport. Yes, well done. 20% of the new fans you could be getting are the only ones that you are getting because the other 80% haven't got access to it. Ridiculous.
Well, this is it. And you're looking at 2 to 3 million watch on Channel 4 when they do a live race, which isn't a huge audience by F1 standards in the past, but 600,000 watch on Sky. It's absolutely ridiculous that they're even having this argument. And Chase Carey's got money. Liberty Media have got the cash. There's plenty of money in Formula 1. They should be sorting this, even if it has to be part of something to do with 2021 and they have to let Sky have next year. They need to be sorting something out. There was talk for those in the UK. Sorry if you're not in the UK because it's a little bit of UK bias here, but that's kind of the stuff I understand. I don't know what goes on worldwide, but feel free to pop it in the chat and there'll be plenty to chat with you there. But there was talk of them negotiating a highlights package with Channel 4. That's now all gone quiet. I don't know how much of that was Liberty Media and how much of that was genuinely Sky being really lovely people. I doubt it was that. But I can't get my head around the conflict, if this makes sense. Okay, so you've got one group of fans, young fans that you want to attract to a sport. You then price them out of that market so they can't watch that sport. You're then aiming things at Grand Prix weekends at young fans, like the fan zone and things like that. They're not going to turn up to Grand Prix if they're not watching on TV because they have no interest in the sport in the first place. People aren't going to go, oh, well, I can't watch F1 on TV for 6 years, but don't worry, I'll go to the British Grand Prix once it starts up again. They'll find something else to watch. And I think somebody else in chat was talking about this because football's pretty much behind the paywall in the UK now. And somebody said it in chat. F1 is not like football. Every team in the Premier League plays 38 games in a season. There are only 20 Grand Prix. It needs to be on terrestrial TV or on a cheaper F1 streaming service, on Sky, or on all three. They could do all three to keep everybody happy. And this is why I wanted to have a bit of a moan about it on stream. Like I say, no notes at all here apart from Jonty's figures there. I've just so frustrated with it. I was reading some stuff today and it's, like you said, Jonty, the fact they accept that it's a problem and they see the issue, but they're not addressing it and they're just going, well, we've got a contract with Sky. Just sort it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be in Liberty's interest to turn around and say, yep, Sky, keep everything you've got and everything you do. But the only thing you're losing is the exclusivity. We're also offering it out to a terrestrial channel if they can afford it, and we're going to offer out F1 TV to the UK. In Liberty's eyes, they're getting all three.
Yeah, I agree. There's no reason why they can't do that. The thing is, people that are paying for Sky and pay for Sky because they enjoy the coverage will probably stick with it. If this is, let's say you're a household that had Sky anyway before F1 came along. Then F1 came, you thought, oh, wicked, I'm a big F1 fan. I'll slap that on my subscription. That's great. If you've got Sky anyway and you're going to keep Sky, you probably will still keep Sky F1. But if you only have Sky, like me, because of the F1, you would soon get rid of that and move to F1 TV. But there's no reason why Liberty Media can't say, well, for the duration of your contract, Sky, we will make up the difference that you're losing in terms of subscription cost, if that makes sense. Because the money's there to use. And if they can strike a deal with a Channel 4 or an ITV, for example, they've then got the money coming in from that as well. So there's ways they could go around it. But I want to really, really scream at Liberty Media for it and blame them for it all, but we have to remember it's Bernie that did this. And by the way, the BBC should get hate as well because they're the ones that backed out their contract in the first place. But because that's why F1 fans pay their licence fee. But let's not get into that one, John T. But you've got Bernie Eccleston to blame, the BBC to blame, so they have to take a big brunt of that, and that's not Liberty Media's fault. But I think Sky are going to be stubborn as hell with it and refuse to budge an inch, quite frankly, John T. I've never really heard Sky budge at all on anything.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention the BBC because the year they backed out of the contract, does anyone know what the highest viewing figures for a sporting event on the BBC was that year?
It was an F1. I think it was Canada. It
was the FA Cup. It was the FA Cup final. The second,
non-F1. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the second was the Monaco Grand Prix. The third was the British Grand Prix, and then fourth came in the Wimbledon final. BBC dropped the cost of Formula One to keep Wimbledon. In what universe does that make sense?
I have to say, Josh Flynn just makes a great point in chat that needs to be made before we move on to Fernando Alonso. Says fans will start watching illegally now from 2019. So Liberty and Sky aren't getting the money anyway. That's the irony. People are just going to look for dodgy streams online or borrow their families, their anti-Bob or whatever, I don't bloody know, their Sky Go or something like that. They're going to find ways around it, and they're not going to get paid either way, are they? So it's in the benefit of Sky even to get this sorted and maybe do something that works for them.
Yeah, it's going to go down the road of cutting off the nose to spite the face because both Sky and Liberty will end up with less when everyone's watching on illegal streams. And always got to take it to someone who's very clever running the streams to get themselves some cheeky little adverts in. I mean, I know they all have the spam stuff on, but if they manage to get a little Patreon or PayPal donations, they can make themselves an absolute fortune.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll move on from this because I could rant about this all day because it does wind me up. We're going to go on to Fernando Alonso. He teased a potential news on Twitter today about his future. That is your tweet. It is a countdown GIF and it simply says 1408, which is therefore 14th of August, we assume, which is Tuesday. This could be an announcement on his future. It could be a new line of sunglasses. You just never know with Fernando Alonso. He might just be trolling Jonty, but I think it looks as though we're going to get some news regarding his future. And this has split people. A lot of people saying, oh, he's going to sign a new deal at McLaren. A lot of people saying he's off to IndyCar. What's your gut telling you right now?
My gut's saying IndyCar. Because he's done Le Mans now. If he does a full season IndyCar, he's going to have a lot more experience and knowledge behind him to have a better shot at the 500.
Yeah, I quite fancy him for IndyCar, if I'm being honest. But, I thought that was nailed on 3 months ago. But then all this talk about how happy he was suddenly at McLaren and people were talking about him signing new deals. I mean, if he does sign a new deal at McLaren, it's got to be 2 years, surely, Jonty, because they can't have the upheaval in a year's time of him disappearing when they're trying to develop a car for 2021.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about this last week with the various other deals that have been signed. Ricciardo got 2 years. Hamilton did 2 years. Bottas has done a year with the option of a second year. Yeah, everything's going to be cutting off at the end of 2020 because of the new rules coming in, which will be getting finalised within the next few weeks, apparently.
Okay.
I've lost my train of thought.
I do that all the time. You might have noticed on streams, but I think...
because it wouldn't make any sense for McLaren to be offering 1 year contracts, particularly the state that they're in.
I agree. I think most contracts need to be 2 years now, unless it's a youngster that you're not sure on maybe and giving them a chance. But I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this. I want him to stay in Formula One because he's a great personality and a great driver. But also, I think we discussed this a couple of weeks ago as well, Jonty. It's time to get some young blood in the sport. It's time to see some other people given a chance. And I think the likes of Fernando Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen, who, according to rumour, is apparently signed up for Ferrari for next year, but nothing official on that, so we'll say no more. But drivers like that now, I feel it's time for them to move aside. Kimi's not bothered by the sport. It's a paycheck for him. Fernando's clearly not 100% happy. He's got his head turned elsewhere. So go elsewhere and go for it, and I'd watch IndyCar with Fernando in, 100%.
No, I've watched several IndyCar races this year already, and there's been some cracking races. Hinchcliffe has been just comedy all the time, and good racing, along with the others. So they've certainly stepped up their game on the spectacle front. Even some of the oval races have been quite entertaining. You never know, if the previous subject doesn't lead towards any fixing, I might be going off to watch IndyCar instead.
Fair enough. I've not watched a lot of IndyCar really since I was a kid, but I'd certainly be interested if he was over there. I think that'd be great to watch as well. I just saw a comment from Nation Gurung says 2020 mass retirement. It could well be that Kimi, Lewis, Fernando, that'd be a big year, wouldn't it, if they all decided to disappear at the end of 2020 just before the big rule changes, because that would shake F1 up massively, not just in terms of the rule changes, but with everything. Quite a tasty prospect in some ways.
Yeah, very much. I think we'd all be loving that if, 3, 4, 5 of the top drivers all go at the same time, leaving 5 seats free out of the top 6 seats available. That would be very entertaining.
One team for next year, which appears to be off the cards, you never know, is Red Bull. Christian Horner said this week, I have huge respect for Fernando. He's a great driver, a fantastic driver, but it's very difficult. He's tended to cause a bit of chaos wherever he's gone. I'm not sure if it would be the healthiest thing for the team for Fernando to join. Our preference is to continue to invest in youth than take a driver who is obviously close to the end of his career. So basically, I'm reading into that, Jonty, it's McLaren or nothing for him in terms of Formula One. So does he really want to be trundling around, if we're being generous, in the midfield next season, or does he want to be off racing for titles in IndyCar? Because McLaren can promise him the world, but they've promised him the world for the last 3 years.
So I was just laughing at him giving Stoffel a snort.
I couldn't not. I'm sorry. The other side to Alonso.
Yeah, I mean, that would be one little reason that it would be a shame to lose him this year, because he's really got a good camaraderie going on with Stoffel. They've been putting some really funny stuff out. Well, it seems that Stoffel can't put anything on Twitter without Fernando being in the background photobombing him somewhere or jumping out of a tree.
That one in Bahrain's brilliant as well. But yeah, I think
the thing is, with the Red Bull statement, Fernando did reply to it with lots of laughing faces. So, yeah, it was almost as if he was admitting that it's just a silly thing and isn't going to happen. But saying that, Horner did also come out a few weeks ago saying it's all done, dusted, Ricciardo, we're just ironing out the little details.
Yeah, I mean, Alonso to Red Bull, I'll throw one thing in there, one word that will confirm pretty much there's no way this is going to happen, and that's Honda. There is absolutely no way he's going to want to gamble on them again. And there's absolutely no way, from a PR side, Honda are going to want him back on board. As much as we love his personality, he was not very nice to Honda, and it turns out that really the attack should have been aimed more at the team.
Yeah, it hasn't done him any favours. He was very, very, very critical of them all the time for 3 years. And it was always directed at the engine, not the team, which really didn't help matters. I mean, I think the worst one was Australia last year or the year before, when he just comes out saying, "Oh, engine feels good, much slower than before." It's like, oh, that's not the way to start a season. Certainly not for the PR view from your team, because Honda really threw everything at it.
Yeah, I still feel for Honda in that. They weren't innocent, as people seem to make out now. They were just as bad as McLaren, but they also weren't the main guilty party in all of that. So Let us know in chat what you think. Is Alonso leaving F1? Is he going to stay at McLaren? Is it IndyCar? I don't know. Mario Kart? Whatever. Wherever you think he's going to go next year, let us know in chat. Are we pretty sure he's not going to be in Formula One next year, John T, if we're being completely honest?
I'm 85% certain that he's gone.
Yeah, I've been saying it all year. I don't think he'll stay past this year. It's those broken promises from McLaren. It's all right saying, oh, McLaren might have convinced him to stay, but they convinced him last year to stay, didn't they? And they convinced him back at the end of 2016 to stay in a last-minute sit-down dinner with Zach Brown and Eric Boullier, where they managed to convince him to give him one more year, and broken promise after broken promise. Why would he? I just can't see that he'd want to do that.
No, I wouldn't want to stay in his position. I would be desperately looking for something better. Unfortunately for him, nothing better is available to him. He's kind of closed all the possible doors.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, in terms of F1, it's McLaren or nobody, isn't it, really?
Unless he jumps on the big improvements that Sauber have been making all year and sees that as a good future.
Or a Haas, maybe, top end of that midfield.
Yeah, you never know.
I'm sure they'd take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah, any of those teams would take him. What you would assume, anyway. I mean, that would make sense for them because they're getting, one of the most talented and experienced drivers that there is at the moment. But I just can't see it happening. No, it's definitely Indy for him.
Yeah, I don't think he'll retire from motorsport because he's too into all this WEC stuff. So I think, it'll be F1 or it'll be IndyCar or nothing from next year. If he stays, I'd be happy because he's a great personality. He's a great driver as well. But at the same time, it'd be great to see somebody else given a chance. Let's hop into Q&A before we overrun massively. I know you said it's only a week, Jonty, but it feels like forever since we've done a Q&A and that. So streaming is going to become a big part of the channel. That's all going to be revealed later on. Little exclusive there. A few bits have tweaked. Let's have a look for some questions. Could they afford him, says Robert McPhee. The Haas side, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Any team like Haas or Sauber have got to find the money to pay Alonso, haven't they? That's the only other side maybe to look at.
Yeah, that is a big problem. I mean, he's taking a huge amount out of McLaren.
Pure Aquax, I hope I've got that right, says, what driver do you support? I genuinely don't. People don't believe me. They think I'm biased towards this driver and hate that driver, but I haven't been a fan of one driver since Michael Schumacher, since he retired the first time. And I've never latched onto a driver like that. And I was a big Michael Schumacher fanboy, as in I hated Alonso for taking those titles off him. I hated Hakkinen for stopping him winning the title in 98 and 99, although broken leg obviously 99, and that was all Hakkinen's fault as well. That was how I was with Michael Schumacher, but I've never latched onto a driver like that. What about you, John T?
I'd say the last driver you could consider me a fan of was Jenson Button, because he was just such a great personality. He was never really one of the moody drivers that you hear on the radio. He was always quite pleasant, hilarious on the grid walks, and a good racer. So I think everyone's missing him a little bit, to be quite honest. I certainly am.
Yeah. Big E says face cam when. Money, mate. I've spent all my money this week on getting the room just about done, and I bought a camera as well, but I didn't buy any lighting. So that's next one for next payday. So that's a little while yet, but it is coming. It is definitely on the horizon. So as for Jonty, you'll have to ask him on that one. Just put you right on the spot with that one, Jonty.
Just after the big ice age in hell.
Yes. That's coming. If that happens, you are doomed. We're all doomed. Would you have hated Kimi if you had won in 2005, says Nation Gurung? Probably. Anybody that stopped Schumacher winning anything I didn't like. So, I'd probably let Kimi off, though, because Kimi was brilliant and still is. I do like a bit of Kimi, but yeah, it's not. Will Force India keep their points? Asks Brandon Glover. As far as I know, John T, that's just, even if they changed their name and all personnel, it would still be their points, wouldn't it, to that point?
Yeah. The points, constructors' points, stay with the team.
Are we going to get a Dutch Grand Prix, says T-Wover Games? There's a lot of talk about it, isn't there? There was talk of... I've forgotten. I want to say Aspen. I'm probably making that up.
No, there was an official FIA inspection at Assen,
Assen, that's the one.
Which is predominantly a bike track. It's kind of narrow, but they've got a lot of runoff. They would probably need some upgrades to the pit facilities, but it's definitely possible and makes perfect sense from Formula One's perspective on the money coming in. You just got to look at any European race. There is always a grandstand that's completely reserved for orange.
You look at Austria, the Dutch fans there, and Grand Prix this year. It'd be crazy not to capitalise on this Verstappen hype and get the sport over there, even if it's just for a few years, you know. So I think there should be a Dutch Grand Prix, but then I still think there should be something in Scandinavia because of all the Finnish drivers we've had and whatnot. So it's all about whether the tracks are there, because I don't see purpose-built tracks being put in some of the European countries. It's not like, you know, Abu Dhabi's where they'll just pump the money in and build a brand spanking new circuit that looks brilliant. They don't want to do that in the same way in Europe. So it has to be an existing track, which is good for us because it's better racing. But there are some very narrow tracks in Europe. I don't know. We'll see. But I'd love a Dutch Grand Prix, and it'd be crazy not to capitalise on it. Pennybags has asked an interesting question. Says, interested in what you thought of Jerez 97, knowing what a huge Schumacher fan you were. Now, cheating sod now. That's exactly what I think of it all. At the time, Jacques Villeneuve shouldn't have made that move. How dare he try and make a move on Michael Schumacher for the World Championship? So I'll let you give a more balanced view on that one, Jonty.
Yeah, it worked once. Why not try it again? Got caught the second time.
The penalty. It's.
Yeah, Sean. So, being the huge Schumacher fan, I'm sure everyone would love to hear your views on Australia 1994.
Well, Damon Hill wasn't ever good enough to win a world championship, even though he won one. So I don't see an issue there. What I will say on Australia, 1994, is that had Imola not happened, Senna would have won that title. Because if Hill can get that close to Schumacher and take it, Senna would have been gone at that point.
Oh yeah, everyone agrees that was his. Even Michael himself.
I was joking about Damon Hill, by the way. It was just a joke. I'm not being deliberately trolling on Damon Hill. He was all right as a driver. I didn't mind him as a personality, but since he's gone to punditry, he's turned into an absolute. Next question. Oh, come on, he has, John T.
Oh yeah. I mean, do you follow him on Twitter? Damon Hill is hellish on Twitter at the moment. Even though I do like the guy, he never shuts up about the Halo. I mean, you think people are bad in comments and general public are bad on Twitter. Hill is the worst. He even was claiming that Hartley was saved by it when his wheel failed.
Yeah.
It's like, if the wheel tethers hadn't been there, that wheel was shooting off into this, over a bleeding barrier somewhere. Absolutely ridiculous.
Before we ended up on Hill, I was going to make a point before Jonty put me on the spot. That was revenge. I know what that was for every time I put you on the spot. But,
I enjoyed that.
I'm still sweating. But I was just going to say what I find hilarious, and it was the same with Vettel in Baku last year, is that they do something like that. Then they're asked to help out with the road safety campaign. What? Really? You think that's, what is that really a punishment? And two, what are we trying to teach people here?
Yeah, it's not the best precedent to set for a road safety thing, is it really?
I'll get in so much trouble now. Sean Jonty, what do you expect from the Ferrari engine upgrade, which they plan to take at Spa/Monza, and can they keep up the fight with Mercs? I think as far as I can see, Ferrari is still the better overall package. I think they've even got the better engine now, but apparently Mercedes have made some big steps forward just before the summer break in terms of their issues with heating. So they should be right up there. But I think at the moment, if we're basing it on who's got the quicker car, you'd have to say Ferrari do, and probably favourites going into the second half of the season, which is why things like Hungary, Jonty, where you've got Bottas helping Hamilton, that's going to be crucial, that team play, for the rest of this season for Mercedes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bottas, he's had both bad luck and a little bit of tibbiness and capitalising on his chances, but it is going to be vital that he really does take those chances now. Because it could be quite bizarre where Bottas having bad luck or not being aggressive enough could lead to Hamilton losing the title. which is quite an odd situation.
Yeah. Stoffel in 2019, says Ronald G324. I don't want him to go. I still rate him. He's had a poor year, but we have to remember he's up against double world champion Fernando Alonso. But he's not had the pace I expected. I really, really thought he was going to really deliver this year, and he has made a lot of mistakes. Even if you ignore the gap to Alonso, you probably tell from my voice I'm a little bit disappointed because of everything that he did before Formula One. He was such a star coming through and really expected a lot from him, but I have a nasty feeling that he will probably go at the end of this year. But at the same time, he's got, relationships with, I think, Frederick Vasseur at Sauber. I think he's got a good relationship there. I think it's Frederick Vasseur, or is it Franz Tost? It's one of the two. But so he might still end up in Formula One, but I think he's probably done at McLaren. But it could all come down to Alonso, couldn't it, Jonty? If he goes, do they really want two new drivers in those cars?
They might not have a choice. I mean, you have to say that the drivers closest to the chopping block at the moment are Van Dorn and Hartley. So it's very tricky. Stoffel might just really get unlucky here, even though he's earned his way there.
Yeah. Any truth to these rumours that Stroll is going to Force India for Spa? We've talked about that a little bit today. We both tend to agree that it's unlikely it'll be for Spa, but we fully expect that if he's not in by the end of the season, he will be next year. I think it's the best way to answer that one. Can Williams bounce back next year? I mean, they've come out, I think it was today or yesterday, they've said that this season is a write-off, which we've been telling them as fans for about 4 months now. But they've now decided this season is a write-off, but they're going to give Paddy Lowe the time to turn it around next year. So if they stop now and focus on next year's car, they can probably take strides forward, but I think it's all going to come down to what deal is done with Mercedes as well. But that has to be done soon, surely, if they are going to switch focus to next year's car, Jonty, because they need to know what money they're working with and what they're working with from Merck.
Well, yeah, exactly. But they said last year, this season's a write-off.
Yeah, that's
by
true.
Admitting that they'd made a massive mistake with the philosophy behind the chassis. And then they've gone and done the same thing this year. Are they just going to say the same thing next year?
Just keep saying it till it comes true, I suppose. Vlogging at Charlie donated a little bit early. Thank you very much for your super chat, mate. Says all these rich idiots should go and play golf. I love some of your super chats. They're brilliant. I've never played golf. Silly golf, crazy golf, silly golf. Yeah, I'm not a rich idiot though. Random for you, Jonty. Sorry, just having a moment there. I used to work at a golf club though, if that interests anybody. No? Okay. Can Renault challenge Red Bull next year? Says this username has been chosen. It's all going to come down to Honda, isn't it, at the end of the day, Jonty? There's no reason why not if that Honda doesn't deliver.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, they might just end up beating them by default on reliability.
Yeah, I mean, the chassis, isn't it, Red Bull? That's going to counterbalance some of the Honda issues. But if Honda turn up with an engine like they had in 2017, then I don't think it really matters what chassis you've got. That's not going to do enough to get you third if you've got Renault with quite good pace in the engine and a little bit of reliability as well. So I think they've got a chance, but I would be surprised if they don't make a step forward. But I can't see Honda delivering a terrible engine next year.
No, they're very much in the firing line now by going to Red Bull. You know, still officially the third best car. They have absolutely got to get it right, because if they don't, the fallout. Even though they were with McLaren before, one of the biggest teams Formula One's ever had, I think the fallout will be even bigger if they get things wrong with Red Bull. But it's unlikely. It depends on how long Newey sticks around.
Yeah, that's a good point. Still some talk about him going to Renault, but Renault have ruled that out. So whether or not that happens, I'm not entirely. It would be brilliant, wouldn't it, for Renault, if we're being honest? But in some ways, I'd be a little bit surprised if that happens. I think he's got a lot of road car activity at Red Bull at the moment that he wants to sort out. So I did just see a great question. I'm going to ask this now. And I'm going to give you some thinking time, Jonty, because it's one of those. It comes from Ben McCarthy. He says, F1's greatest 21st century Grand Prix. So I'm going to let you think on that one for a while, and I'm going to think because that's a tough one, and we'll try and answer that before the end of the stream. Can Williams survive losing Stroll and Martini and not go into administration, says Scotty McNichols. They're losing a lot of money this year, potentially, aren't they, end of the season? Stroll going, Martini going. But as we touched on earlier, there's still money in Williams, isn't there? And they do still get a form of long-standing team bonus, don't they? I think it's only about 10 or 15 million, but they've still got something coming in from F1.
Yeah, they do still get their long-standing team benefit. And they've got that massive link with supplying all the energy technology for Formula E. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them come up with some kind of big sponsor tied into that.
Yeah, possibly. It's just surprising we've not heard more on title sponsors and sponsorship at Williams, but at the same time, I suppose they're not going to say too much, are they? So at this stage, just looking for... Let's have a look through here. Did see another couple of questions. Maximilian Weiss says, who is the best driver on the grid right now? Why did I ask that? Why did I ask that question? I think whatever we say now, we're going to get into trouble. So I would say fastest driver on the grid, Lewis Hamilton. I don't think there's any doubt about that for me. In terms of best all-round driver, I would probably say Fernando Alonso.
Fastest over one lap is Lewis, without question. Best racer, Alonso. Best overtaker, Ricciardo. Wet weather, we have only seen a small amount of evidence from Max, namely one race, but his performance in that race was astonishing. So he's probably up there. Lewis is a great wet weather driver, but as we've already seen, that is a bit of an Achilles heel for Vettel. So it's an interesting one. Hamilton takes fastest one lap and wet weather at the moment.
Yeah, it's difficult to disagree with that. I can imagine the comments already, mate. But like I said, those in chat understand what we're doing. So are you ready to answer that question yet? I'm not sure.
There is an obvious choice that loads of people said in the chat, and that's Canada 2011. Because it was just completely bizarre. How many millions of us sat glued to the TV when literally nothing happened for 2 hours? We were just sat watching the garages, looking outside, wondering what to do, making little boats. And we're all sat on the edge of our seats wondering when it's going to start. How is it going to start? It was a great race, but it's the obvious choice. So I'm still thinking.
It's a tough one, isn't it? It's like you say, it's one of those... I guess it's open to individual opinion as well, if that makes sense, because what's brilliant for one person won't be for another. I mean, we got a bit of stick. We did our top 10 must-watches, didn't we? Oh, these are all chaotic Grand Prix, and it's not all about chaos, it's about overtaking, but it's often the chaotic races like Canada 2011, if you want to go back further. 98 in Belgium. It's those races that people remember, and as new fans you want to go see, but it's just... I don't know. I would be tempted to say Japan, and I've forgotten what year now. Is it 2005, Kimi?
Yeah.
Yeah, from the back end of towards the back end of the grid, or turning it around to win that race was just phenomenal. So in terms of no real twists and turns, I'd probably say Japan 2005, but you've got to put Canada 2011 in there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should do another video that's all 21st century.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Yeah, that's not a bad one.
Yeah, because there was a lot of chaotic ones that we did put in, and they do always get mentioned by people. And I'm a little bit of a Jensen fan, as I mentioned earlier, so, I mean, there's more races of his. His first win, Hungary 2006. Australia 2010 was an awesome one. But again, they're all chaotic, wet races.
Yeah, you could easily throw Brazil 2012 in there, couldn't you? Vettel's come back to that one to the title. Hockenheim 2000, Barrichello's first win in Formula One. That was chaos again, but his drive was brilliant from 18th on the grid to win that Grand
Yeah,
Prix.
yeah, and that was a much loved victory because everyone loves Barrichello. He's never done anything horrible for people to hate for.
Canada 2018 was the best race in F1 history. I'm still sleeping on that one. That puts me to sleep at night.
Oh, good idea, racing. Go back year by year, pick the best race of each season.
That's definitely a video idea. I like that, definitely. Going to take one more question, then we're going to disappear because we're overrunning, but not stupidly as usual, so that's not too bad. I'm going to try and find something a bit different if we've got anything. A few people asking about if Hulkenberg will ever get a podium. He's got a great chance next year if Renault can deliver a car and engine, so yeah, he could do. No reason why not. Every single race at Barcelona is the best of the century. Yeah, not on that one. What teams could join in 2021? Then we'll go with that one. I've seen a super chat, I think, coming through as well, but that's from Brandon Glover. I think Porsche and Aston Martin seem like the most likely at the moment. I've not really heard anything for a while. I think after the initial blueprint, if you like, was put down for 2021 back in Bahrain, I think Aston Martin came out and said we'd be very keen to sign up if they were the terms, but I think those terms have changed massively since then.
Yeah, because the terms that were going to be, certainly regarding to the engine, is now pretty much that not a lot will change.
Yeah.
The MGUH is going to be staying, which was a big thing. Porsche is a good shout, or someone from the Audi group, put it a simple way, as well.
Yeah.
Aston Martin, I think, is more unlikely now. What we really need is just, like I've mentioned before, for someone to come in with a good amount of money to some of the impressive lower formula teams like Carlin, Arden, Dams. They've already got the sort of structure in place. They just need the extra money to make the step up to Formula One.
Yeah. I was going to say something there. It's gone completely out of my head. I can't remember what it was now. Oh, yeah. Something like an Aston Martin Cosworth tie-in would be good to kind of create an independent engine supplier. I think rather than just looking at new teams coming in, I think that'd be good as well for teams like your Force Indias and your Williams, is to have the option to go and get themselves a Cosworth or a modern day equivalent and buy that engine rather than having to worry about joining up with another team's politics, if that makes sense. Ferrari have a lot of control over Haas and over Sauber, and Mercedes will have that control over Williams if they were to go down that route, and Red Bull over Toro Rosso. So it'd be kind of good to have an independent engine supplier so that we get smaller teams having a bigger say on the grid.
Yeah, that would be great. Certainly if they can produce a really good engine.
It would certainly help, definitely. Last one then from Vlogging at Charlie, another super chat. Thank you very much, mate. Says, what team would you get rid of? I wouldn't get rid of any. I'm not just saying that to sit on the fence. I think, no, I absolutely wouldn't, because we need them. We need all of them, even with a load of people coming in 2021. If that happens, I think we still need all of those we've got. And I can't think of a team that I really dislike.
I wouldn't get rid of any because we can't afford to lose them. And I wouldn't actively get rid of them. But if a certain team is going to carry on with the threats, I wouldn't stop them.
And that's a story for another day. Let's not get back into that one yet. I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's one of those. But we'll leave it there, I think, mate. It's been a pleasure sitting and chatting about F1. Not long now, mate. 2 weeks until this time in 2 weeks we'll have had the Belgian Grand Prix. We'll be in the middle of a back-to-back run again. So we'll get there. We will get there between us.
Yeah, not long now. Only 1.2 million seconds.
And now I'm depressed. Thank you for that. But thank you very much, John T. I'll inevitably talk to you in a bit. It was a pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks everyone for throwing up some nice curveball questions again.
We love it. Thank you very much, mate.
See you, folks.
Thanks as ever then to John T. And thank you, of course, to you guys for all tuning in. It has only been a week, but it has felt like forever. So it's nice to sit down and get chatting to you all about Formula One. As I was saying earlier, there'll be a lot more live streams coming up. The next video will be out on the channel on Tuesday. If Fernando Alonso announces any big news about his future, I will, of course, go live shortly after on Tuesday. So I may be talking to you then. So definitely. But no video tomorrow. Video Tuesday. Possible live stream Tuesday as well. Content Thursday. There'll be a video on Saturday too, and we'll be live again next Sunday. We are still in the winter, I know it's summer, upload schedule. So videos Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays, and you stream on a Sunday. In the meantime, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.